In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your front brake hose on this Toyota Camry. Let's get started. If your vehicle has a locking lug nut, it should have one of these locking keys that goes on it. Find the correct slot, and I'm going to break this free by hand before I raise the vehicle up and use an air impact or electric on any of the other lug nuts. It is not recommended that you put an impact on that. So with a 21mm socket and a breaker bar, break this free. At this point, it is safe to put an impact on it because it's already broken free, and you basically just want to avoid the high force that the impact will put on this because it can break the little teeth internally. Now continue with your impact or tool of choice. 21mm socket, remove all the rest of your lug nuts. Remove your wheel. If it's stuck, give it a little tap. It should pop right off. Now with the wheel off, you can see the brake hose right over here. It goes from the caliper onto the bracket, down over there, and into that bracket where the brake line is. I'm going to start with the brake line flare fitting there. The reason for that is because if I can break that free, I know I'm all set for the rest of the job. If not, we have to approach it a little bit differently. Often these fittings will not just seize into the threads, but also the line. And if you break this line, you're going to need a new brake line. I'm trying to avoid that, and if I cannot break this free off of the line, we will have to take the hose off completely first and unthread the hose off of the fitting instead of the fitting off of the hose. So, having said that, I'm going to try and break this free. As you can see, I already sprayed it with rust penetrant. If you want to take a wire brush to it, go ahead, wire brush some of the rust away. I did, but that's not going to do a whole lot. Rust penetrant will be a much better help in this situation. I'm going to put a 10mm flare nut wrench on this fitting here, and the reason for that is because the flare nut wrench grabs onto a couple extra sides as opposed to an open-ended wrench, so I highly recommend it. That way you don't damage the fitting, because if you strip it out, well, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get that off of here. So let's see if we can break this free without breaking or damaging the line. Looks like I'm bending the bracket. Well, the hose is spinning in the bracket, so that's a good sign, I guess, but that's not really what I'm going for right now. Okay, if I continue bending this bracket, it's going to break, so I'm going to get some locking pliers on this so I can hold it and put counter pressure on it while I try to break this free. I only recommend doing this if you know for sure you're going to end up replacing this brake hose. Do not clamp anything onto a brake hose that you are going to reuse for any reason. There we go. Oh, looks like I got it. All right, but the line is spinning with the fitting, so the next thing right here is going to be to break that line free off of the fitting. If you spin it too many times, well, it's metal, so it will only bend so many times before it snaps. So, having said that, I'm going to spray some more rust penetrant here, and then I'm going to take a little rubber mallet and tap this line. Hopefully by vibrating it back and forth, I can allow it to break free off of that fitting. If not, that's okay, we'll just remove the hose off of the line. If you do this, be gentle, don't do it too many times, and don't bend the line. You're just trying to shake it basically so it can break free off of that fitting. That's twisting the line. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here. The fitting is broken free. I did not twist the line too much, so my next step is going to be removing the rest of this hose so we can remove and unthread the hose from that fitting, and we'll just leave that fitting as it is on that line. Looking further down, remove this 12mm bolt that holds this bracket for the brake line or the brake hose onto the strut. It also clamps on the ABS wire. So keep that in mind. Both will come off. Well, they're going to want to come off. Only this one will actually come off. This one's kind of hooked on here. So I'm just going to leave it, set this aside. Because I know for sure that I'm replacing this hose, I'm going to pinch it off with these hose pinching pliers. This will give me a little bit more time to work with while I have the hose disconnected. I will not be pinching the new hose. I do not recommend that. Only do this to a hose that you know you're not going to reuse. If you don't have these special pliers, just use some locking pliers. Now take a 14mm wrench or socket and ratchet, whatever you have. Break this banjo bolt free. I have a collection bucket underneath because fluid will start leaking out at this point. Even though we pinched the line, there is fluid in the caliper, and that's what's going to leak. Take this off, remove the hose. Make sure no washer stuck on the caliper. The style washers we have here, crush washers, the style crush washers we have here is the original Toyota ones that are basically hooked onto the hose, just like that. So unless you have a different hose on here than the original, your washers should be still on the hose. Put that down. Inspect your banjo bolt, make sure it's still in good condition. Mine is, but if yours looks like it's too rusty on the head or the threads are stretched or damaged, replace it because it will not stand up to the pressure of the brake fluid coming in here. Now we have to remove this bracket here, or the clamp that holds on the brake line. You can do this multiple ways. I'm just going to grab some needle nose pliers and pinch it and basically pry it off of here. Go. This should unlock the brake hose from the bracket, which it did, so that's great. And now we should be able to unthread this hose off of this fitting. If you have to hold the fitting with anything, a wrench or pliers, go ahead and do that. I'm just going to keep unthreading this. Brake fluid will come out of the line once you're done unthreading this. Keep that in mind. Have a collection bucket ready to catch that and have the new line ready so we can lose as little brake fluid as possible. There we go, that line is free. Brake fluid is coming out. I will clean these threads with a wire brush at this point. I don't want all of that debris getting into the new brake hose. This is also indirectly going to clean my bracket here. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I would like to get rid of most of this debris. All right, now I'm going to take a little bit of brake parts cleaner, rinse this off. Yes, I know the line is open, but brake fluid is coming out, which means it will not actually have any brake parts cleaner inside of the line because, well, we have a flow of brake fluid here. I'm going to wait about 5 to 10 seconds for new brake fluid to come out of here. And at this point, I would say I'm all set. I can put the new brake line on here. Keep in mind, now brake fluid will come out of the end of the brake hose. Thread this on quickly and have the end of the brake hose aimed towards a collection bucket. Now, in order to get this into the bracket, you can see that it's slotted. It's flat on one side and round on another side. We're going to have to spin this so that the flat sides are parallel with the bracket. You can do this with some pliers. Be very gentle if you grab it over there on the pressed part where the hose meets the line. But once you line it up, there we go. That should pop right through. Grab your retainer and lock that in. I'm going to grab my wrench and tighten up this line. Just snug it, snug that fitting onto the hose. I know the line will twist, but that's okay. It's not going to twist too much. I just want this to be nice and snug like that. There we go. Now grab your banjo bolt, put a brand new copper washer on. Then you're going to want to stick the banjo bolt through the hose and then another copper washer on this side. Now get that bolt to start into the caliper, just like so. And once you have it snugged up with your wrench or socket, let's torque it down. The torque for this banjo bolt is 22 foot-pounds. Now let's take the boot off of the bleeder screw and let air come out. This is an 8mm in size, by the way. Look at that. We already have a little bit of pressure building up in here. That's good. Work this back and forth if it's a little bit stuck. And I'm going to do a gravity bleed now, which is basically just letting gravity pull fluid down into the caliper, fill it up, and push all the air out. Once we're done with the gravity bleed, it is important to do a full manual brake bleed. All right, there we go. We have fluid coming out. I'm going to cap this off and do my manual brake bleed. Make that nice and snug. To begin your manual brake bleed, make sure that your brake master cylinder is topped off with clean fluid. Then you're going to want to have a second person in the car pumping up the brake pedal as you open and close the bleeder screw. So after a few pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal and open up the bleeder screw. At this point, air and fluid will come out. Once the pedal has reached the floor, close off the bleeder screw and have them pump up the brakes again. After 2 to 3 pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal once again and open up the bleeder screw. Repeat this procedure until no more air comes out of the caliper and you have only clean fluid. Once you get to that point, close off the bleeder screw and top off the master cylinder with clean fluid to make sure it's full. Clean any residual up. You don't want to confuse anything for a potential leak. Use brake parts cleaner, spray it down. With that done, put the cap back on if you still have it. Hopefully you do. It prevents debris from clogging up the bleeder screw. Let's get the wheel back on. Put on all 5 of your lug nuts, bottom them out, and then we'll torque them in a cross pattern to 76 foot-pounds. Once again, 76 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. There you have it. Don't forget to get an alignment.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.